Just released minutes of the
What are we even talking about today?
Show members agreed the
I don't know.
outlook for growth is getting
Cats.
stronger, which justifies more.
Brett Martell.
One
Okay.
of those, probably a quarter
Martell's
of
on today, right?
considered likely
Yes.
next month. We've got smartphones, smart
Instagram
TVs,
publishing.
smart
No
speakers,
one really
regaling
cares.
us
with
with
him being the
strong
ski
opposition from the
captain
gun
of his
industry
high
has been
school
keeping these weapons off
ski
shelves,
team, or
but
captain of
Garrett
his high school
Glassman
ski
of
team.
Lodestar
Oh.
Firearms
So he was
thinks
telling us all
times are
about
changing
Olympic
for a
skiing.
gun that fires only when it's linked to an external device on the owner, like a smartwatch.
So you have to be within 10 inches with that watch in order for it to fire.
Right.
So
This is
what
also how
about Chase
Glasser
Daniels?
says
They
his
re-signed
smart
him.
gun will work.
I wonder
Our token is either going to be in a ring,
if he comes back.
a bracelet, or quite possibly
if they think
implanted right here.
Taysom Hill's the next quarterback, why
Will
would they?
actually have an implant.
Because he's not really the next quarterback.
But Glasser isn't the
It's
first
just
to try to get
right.
the
the
public to
infatuation
go
of
for the
SP.
smart gun.
Yes.
We've seen kids shoot themselves, shoot their parents.
The New Jersey Institute of Technology spent 12 years building a gun that could only be fired by its owner, but ran into an
Sounds like we're
Jersey
gonna be
law that says once a
The
smart
Howlin'
gun
Wolf
is sold
thing, or whatever,
anywhere
the
in
Wolf
the
Stand's
US,
gonna be like one of our,
Jersey gun
like we're gonna have
dealers
a
can't
co-op
sell
there or
traditional
something.
guns.
Oh, it sounds like Tim wants to go there every day.
I know. It sounded like he had some kind of deal with him or
minute.
something, didn't
So
he?
it's changing.
He kept going like, "Oh, we can use that
Priceline
bike
Group is
room. We'll
becoming
cut
booking
deals there." And I'm
holders
like,
to reflect the fact that
Or
the
no,
website
just go over there and have
Priceline.com
drinks.
is
Oh,
only
cut
one
deals
site.
and-
And also,
I don't know, it sounded to me like he had some kind of
site is now
plan.
its biggest
The YouTubers are loving this, I'm sure.
Also
Like,
on
what kind of
kayak
deals are you cutting,
rentalcars.com
guys?
And Asia-based accommodation site
Dunc and Holder.
Dakota.com. It'll be traded under the
D&H.
symbol BKNG. And the
I need to go get
latest
us
in the food business,
t-shirts.
a
That's
banana
something
you
I
can
need to
eat,
do.
Peel and all.
I gotta
It was
get
developed by a
that done.
Japanese company called D&T Farms. The no-peel banana is
30 seconds.
Japanese slang for amazing or incredible. They're only being sold in Japan
my God, we're
so
going on
far
here in 30
for
seconds.
$7 each.
Yeah, dude.
Consumer and business news. Joe McConnell, NBC News Radio.
Jeff's
You
ready.
wanted to be a
Jeff's ready
teacher
for
when
the
you were
day.
little, but you grew up and things
Well,
changed.
my
Well,
head
time
feels like
to
a
put it
soggy
back on your
pumpkin.
list. Innovative things are happening.
I
in
thought I
teaching
had a little
today,
too much
and you
to
can
drink.
be a part of it.
I'm
Make more.
Well, that was the problem. Is I started
Visit teach.org.
early and just
Showtime.
well. Today's National Margarita Day too, so Superior, let's go.
no, no. Y'all incorrigible.
Dunc and Holder on a Thursday, February 22nd. Larry Holder, Jeff Duncan, Clyde Verdun here in our NOLA.com Times Picayune studio. Dave DeCorbier back at iHeart Central. And I didn't anticipate leading the show with this, and it's not anything to do with bagging on Tulane women's basketball. But look, they hosted UConn last night, and they lost by what? 50 almost? 40?
Something like that, yeah.
I always wonder, how is UConn so much better than everyone else every year? I'm
They weren't
fascinated.
better than everyone last year.
They
got the best players.
Typically, they're better than everyone else.
Typically they're better than the rest, but women's college basketball is starting to catch up. Because, I mean, honestly, UConn, it will probably, obviously because they're undefeated, they're going to be the number 1 overall seed. Baylor will probably be number 2. You'll have Mississippi State probably be number 3. And then number 4 will be and of course, probably number 4 also in that range will be the Louisville Cardinals.
Wait, they're good at women's
They're
basketball?
really good at women's basketball. Yes, they
Oh,
I watched the
started
game of
it.
theirs, and they absolutely smoked. It was Duke, I think. It was either Duke or North Carolina. It was somebody on national TV, and they absolutely just waxed.
I think they started the season like 19-0 or something like that. Yeah, they're good every year. They've been to the championship game.
Good every year?
Yeah, they're ranked in the top 10 every year.
Since when?
They just
No, they've been a quality program over the course of the last 8 years.
Jeff Waltz, when he got there, and they recruited at a very high level. I mean, they're in the ACC with Notre Dame's a power. I think Duke and North Carolina, it's pretty competitive. But
it is.
But the point is, no one's going to beat UConn. I don't think
this might be the year. And I mean, obviously, after last year, we're talking about, obviously South Carolina had made a push. They were finally able to break through. But I mean, obviously, the talk of last year's NCAA tournament was Mississippi State and hitting that game-winning shot in the Final Four to send Mississippi State to make an all-SEC final, Mississippi State and South Carolina. I mean, obviously, UConn was stunned because what else can you do? I mean, you lost on the last-second shot. So it was a fantastic game, though. I remember I was at a Hooters in Baton Rouge watching it with a guy who at
He
that point
remembers
worked
where he was when
yeah.
he was watching the women's Final Four.
Yeah.
That's not like an iconic moment.
I've got
to me.
enough for that.
was when I was.
We're columnists. We're paid to watch sports. We don't watch sports. No, I
remember where I was. I was at a Hooters somewhere watching the women's.
It's not my fault, Joe. Well, it's not. As we talked about before the show started, is clearly we're not surprised that your memory is that bad, because clearly you also do other things when provoked because you are a child. So, wow, we're not even going to talk about that.
Clyde just firing double barrels. Well, speaking of women's sports, I was in an uptown institution last night watching the U.S. women's hockey victory, gold medal victory over Canada, and that was thrilling. That was awesome theater. Women win in a, what do they call it? Is it a shootout?
Had to have been a shootout. That's the only highlight I've ever seen.
It was a shootout, and it was
a shootout.
I hope I'm not spoiling it for anybody that DVR'd it, but it was awesome event. And yesterday in the Olympics was one of the great, maybe the best day of the Olympics so far. The Winter Olympics. I know you're not into it, but
yeah, I'm not. I have no idea.
Lindsey Vonn, I think.
Yeah, she got a bronze medal. For as much as Clyde belittles me, he calls Lindsey Vonn the Anna Kournikova of women's sports, which is not.
And clearly that's
she's
wrong.
At least won a gold once.
Yeah, clearly that's wrong. She has won a gold, but she's won, 3 or 4 bronze?
She medaled, and Michaela Schifrin was upset. She ended up getting the silver at the last second. I think somebody, I forget who, upset her with a late run, but she was winning the whole time, and then someone beat her right at the very end, and ended up she had to settle for silver. So it was a great day in the Olympics if you're watching.
Yeah, I'm good. I'm not watching. So that's our Olympic update here on Dunc and Holder. I'm good. Is the tomato paste still on a little board flying around? Is he still doing those, or is his run over?
I think his run's over.
Oh, well, fiddlesticks. That's too bad.
Yeah, I'm sure you're so sad.
The problem is, in about 10 minutes, I guarantee you that Brett Martell of the Associated Press is going to come on and tell us about the slalom and all that stuff. He was trying to get on, and he wanted to talk about the Winter Olympics. That is not why we're going to have him on the show, but he is coming on the show around 10:20. Around 11:20, we're going to have our own Josh Katzenstein, NOLA.com, and Times-Picayune covers the Saints. We'll get his thoughts as we're approaching free agency. He will be part of our two-man team heading up to the Combine next week. Our own Herbie Teope will be joining him as well up there. So wanted to bring him on to kind of get some thoughts on heading into free agency, and then also kind of the back, I don't want to say backroom deals, but the deals that go on while you're at the Combine. It's not just about the prospects. And Josh was one of the big newsbreakers last year when he broke the story about the Brandon Cooks trade as far as what teams were looking for, who was interested. And so we'll talk with Josh about that. Also, we'll take your phone calls. 504-260-1280 is the number to get involved. And Andrew Lopez did a good insight as to far as what LSU needs to do to get into the tournament, the NCAA tournament, as far as in men's basketball. We'll kind of go through that. And then Will Guillory, if you haven't seen it on NOLA.com, did a very good breakdown of the Pelicans' schedule and what's kind of ahead as far as what they need to do and where they sit going into the backstretch after the All-Star break, which they take the court tomorrow night. They take on the Miami Heat in the Smoothie King Center as they get back from the All-Star break. So plenty to talk about here on today's Dunc and Holder. And some interesting, I'm just looking at Twitter right now, just something totally random.
What's that?
That Kirk Herbstreit is going to be taking John Gruden's place.
Seriously?
In the NFL draft coverage.
Oh, wow.
Not in the booth, not in the Monday night booth. Because at first that's what I thought. I said, whoa, okay. But no, he's going to be doing draft coverage for ESPN. So interesting move.
And along those lines, something that I'm curious if we have anybody out there who'd like to call us and give us their thoughts. I've got a story this weekend about the future of the Saints radio play-by-play position.
Whoa!
And I'm curious to hear what people think. We know Jim Henderson, he manned that spot for almost 3 decades. And that's a big, high-profile gig. And Intercom will make that decision.
You're not supposed to mention them. They're our competitor. We can't mention the competition. I'm just kidding.
They have the deal with the Saints.
Causing havoc.
But it's going to be interesting to see who gets that job.
That's a Fox deal, but whatever.
Big shoes to fill.
Exactly.
Replacing Jim Henderson.
Well, that's like, do you want to replace the legend? I'll just put it to you this way. Did Hollywood Smoke Laval do a great job replacing Skip Bertman?
Hollywood Smoke.
No.
My
Molinari came back in, and you don't want to replace the legend. You want to be the guy replacing the replacement.
The legend.
Exactly. So, but look, yeah, I think there is a lot of intrigue because once that position opened up, you and me both, Jeff, that's what people were asking us about. It's like, what are the Saints going to do in free agency? What are the Saints going to do in the draft? And who's going to replace Jim Henderson? Like, that is actually a big topic of conversation. And look, there are plenty of good candidates out there, and it's certainly going to be something interesting. So, yeah, if you want to get involved in that, who do you think should replace Jim Henderson? I'm serious. People have their opinions.
Yeah.
We want to hear them.
I mean, the Saints are part of the cultural fabric of the city, and that position is extremely high profile. It's not just any NFL play-by-play job. The New Orleans Saints are kind of, they're so ingrained in our community here. I think it's very similar to being the Packers play-by-play voice or the Steelers. You know, this isn't like the Jaguars guy or gal. This is a big-time position. I mean, Jim Henderson manned that spot mostly since 1986. So he had a little interim there from 90 to 93 where he was doing national stuff, and then he got the job back in 93 and held that position all the way up to this year. Wayne Mack had it for about 5 or 6 years in the 70s. Larry Matson, all the way back to Al Wester, who just passed away actually last week. He was the first Saints radio play-by-play man, but for the most part, Jim Henderson's been synonymous with that position, and somebody is going to be stepping into those shoes in covering a team that should be a Super Bowl contender next year. It's kind of exciting, and I really have no idea who's going to get that job. I don't think there's anybody that just truly stands out that you say, well, this person's going to step right in.
Well, I think there's a boat of candidates out there, but I don't know. You just don't know. It's going to be an interesting choice because do you want to have someone that's the same as Jim Henderson, or do you want to have a different flavor to it? And I think that's something that, you know, obviously we're not making the decision, and I don't think we're going to go out there and publicly beat the drum for certain people. But there's certainly there's certainly candidates out there, but it's almost to the eye of the beholder, what type of person do they want to have in there? And look, there locally, as I'm like coughing up a lung, locally we have plenty of good candidates that are already in the city, honestly.
I'm just wondering, you know, I almost feel like you have to get somebody that's either one, a New Orleanian, or two, familiar with the Saints. I would be surprised if it was somebody out of the blue, just a broadcasting professional that was brought in to take that job. I almost feel like they have to have somebody related or connected to the Saints or the city. I could be wrong, but it just feels like that's what the move that would be the smart move, because the Saints are so beloved in the city. It would be weird to stick somebody in that role that's not connected.
Now, I'll throw it on the other side. When the Pelicans made a move and went and got Joel Myers, he wasn't local, but it's different. That's a Pelicans TV thing. I think that's different.
New Orleans.
And then
that's different. But he's also been a very. Joe Myers is a name among NBA circles of guys who have covered the NBA.
Right.
You can get him for TV. It's not like he was a completely proven unknown. He had just been on Lakers broadcast. And
he was not an unknown. Like, people know him nationally.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, like, this, and I'm putting it to this, and just think of, say, Chris Blair when he took over for Jim Popcorn.
That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah, I was actually going to bring
that
that up.
he's kind of an outsider, and he came in. Obviously, he's doing a great job. But I think this position is different than some of these other positions as far as how many people live and breathe the radio calls for the Saints.
I agree 100%, and I think it's a really intriguing hire, and I have no idea what's going to happen. I'm curious to see, and I think a lot of our listeners and people in New Orleans are curious to see how it plays out.
I agree. All right, let's hit the phone lines real quick, and then we'll take a break. 504-260-1280. Let's go to Jeff in New Orleans. Hey, Jeff, thanks for calling Dunc and NOLA. What's up, Jeff?
Yeah. they'll never get it, but it's a doggone shame, because who would be more outstandingly enthusiastic or wonderfully goofy and just naturally New Orleans than Todd Graffinini? Oh my God, his crazy, outstanding calls for Tulane would just be times 10 for the Saints. He'll never get it, but man, who could be more wonderful than that?
I can't disagree with you. Here's the thing. Here's my problem. Hey, Jeff, appreciate the phone call. It's like if I went out there and endorsed someone like Todd, I mean, I'll just throw it out there. Todd is he's one of my good friends, and he's the godfather to my youngest boy. So it's I can't like say, Todd's got to get it, even though I think he'd be awesome at it. I can't go out there and say, beat the drum, because, look, there are plenty of talented people. But look, he's someone who I think is certainly going to be considered for that gig. And the fact that we're talking about it, heck, I didn't even know we were going to be talking about this today, but it's a hot topic. I mean, that's what people want to know, and that's why you're going to be writing a column about it, because people have a big interest. And I know it's funny. I almost feel like we're a radio station, another on a different station, and we're talking about that. But this is different. It's not like I'm saying, who's going to be on Sports Talk on 870 on WW. I mean, we're not talking about that. We're talking about the voice of the Saints, and it's a big time position.
Yeah, and I think Todd Graffinini would be an excellent choice. I think we have a lot of local candidates. He's one of the really strong candidates locally, and I agree with Jeff. The thing about Graff is he is passionate. And I think,
he's got no shortage of that.
I just think whoever gets that job needs to be passionate.
It's a fair ball. Racing around third is Kobe Owen. The throw is going to be up the line and safe.
Is he safe? Couldn't tell.
I'm not sure.
But let's go to break right here, because we're going to get Brett Martella right here on the show next segment. But he makes, as bad as Tulane athletics can be sometimes, you listen, and he makes you want to listen to those games. He makes you want to listen to them. So now it does sound like I'm giving a public endorsement. But I mean, what are you going to do?
But it goes back to exactly what you said, though. There going to be no shortage of candidates in the city of New Orleans that are all already doing work, and in the state of Louisiana, among whatever national candidates you have, that are more than qualified to come into living rooms 20 plus times a year on radio, that are going to be really, really good at the job, who know the Saints, who have also been with the Saints too, and he's one of them among many that are in the city. So I don't think it's, not that it's room for him, but there are a lot of really good candidates, you're right. It's going to be very intriguing to see how kind of unfolds.
Yeah, I'm curious to see. All right, 504-260-1280, let's open it up. Who do you think should replace Jim Henderson? Give us your thoughts. We'll have Brett Martell coming up here next, Josh Katzenstein in the 11 o'clock hour, and we'll talk probably not the whole time about the radio, but this is an interesting topic, so if you want to chime in, feel free. So come on back. Sports 1280, NOLA.com, the iHeartRadio app. Dunc and Holder. That's probably like, oh my God, what are you doing? I mean, that's the best call, one of the best calls I've ever heard.
Almost mobile.
You need to send that to Dave.
I did.
Okay. That call. Well, we made that call famous.
I know.
You were there, and we put it out.
I just noticed they got our. They're using our sound card.
Oh yeah, we made that call famous for sure.
Stop by
O'Reilly Auto
USA
Parts
today and pick up 5 points on Mobil 1 full synthetic
you're right.
for $28.95. Plus get a $10 O'Reilly Auto Parts gift card after mail-in rebate.
I had to turn mine back up because I couldn't hear you. I turned it down and I couldn't hear you.
Full synthetic motor oil at O'Reilly Auto Parts. Better part.
Crap, I don't have Brett Martell's phone number.
Yeah, I got it.
All right. You sent it to
Did you get that email, Double D?
Hold on, let me see.
It's Graff's call, that home run.
Ole Miss.
Oh yeah, I just got that one.
Yeah, the famous one.
Well, shoot, I mean, I cannot believe that just happened in the Tulane winning call. I keep those in there.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, I got them on hotkeys.
That's awesome.
And get line happy. This
That one of the Ole Miss
the
game
boost
is
and make
the
most of your
greatest.
tax
There's
refund.
nothing will ever top that.
All right, you gonna text me that number?
Yeah, I'm gonna send it to you right now.
Minute and a half.
All right, it's coming to you right now.
Phones for
right.
on Boost super reliable and super fast
Brett's gonna
nationwide
come on,
network.
and he's
Visit your nearest Boost
he's a
Mobile
huge
store for
Graf
a
fan.
great tax season deal. Boost makes it easy to switch. Switching makes it easy to save.
Offer ends 3/8/18. First line is $100 a month.
I talked to
for free. Requires one line to port in. Includes unlimited talk, text, and data with video streams at up to 480p. Music at up to 500 kilobits per second. Gaming up to 2 megabits per second. Data deprioritization during congestion. Free phones require port in on plans $50 or higher while supplies last. Coverage and offers
he
not
likes
available
Graf.
everywhere. Restrictions apply.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, he's a big fan.
Yeah.
So like, I think he would be happy.
I still no number.
Excited about Katie's expanded second floor seating.
Oh,
and
just
private
sent
dining
it. Okay,
room.
hold on.
Yeah, but how about my
Jeff's brain's
vast local
mush.
sports knowledge?
I'm a little foggy.
Should we be
Oh,
talking
I sent it to Brett.
Of
Brett,
course.
here's your phone number.
Here's your phone number, Brett.
What you did.
That's
In case
awesome.
you need it. Glad you said something, because I'm obviously a little
What about
foggy.
Katie's award-winning
What's
menu?
going on?
Yeah,
It's
folks,
not-
I invite Katie's. Eric
Hold
and I
on.
don't have to brag about
I don't know
the
why
food.
it won't
Katie's,
send
the
to you.
food speaks for itself. Katie's.
No, I just got it. It just came
Oh,
through.
okay.
3701 on.
Phone's all messed up.
38 years to the day after the U.S. shocked the Russians in the Miracle on Ice. It's the women who pull off a huge upset. They beat arch rival Canada 3-2 in a shootout to win the gold
Screw
medal.
it, I'm gonna
Jocelyn
endorse them. Screw it.
Lamoureux-Davidson scores up a triple deacon.
No one's pushing you to do this, so it's
The
fine.
U.S. women in 20 years.
Whatever.
The NBA resumes
Yeah, I
play
almost
after the
feel like-
All-Star break with 6 games on tonight's
I don't know,
schedule.
it's still-
It looks like Spurs All-Star
sounds
forward
bizarre to
Kawhi
you.
Leonard
No,
is
it
done
doesn't.
for the season.
What does?
Head coach
You-
Greg Popovich.
you fix it, or
I think it sounds like it. I'm not going to know for
sounds
sure.
fine to me now.
Yeah, it sounds fine right now, but I'm not going to know until we go back on air.
Right.
All right, 20 seconds. And Brett says thanks for the reminder, Jeff. He'd forgotten his number.
Because of the Sports Illustrated investigation that revealed a
Very funny.
workplace that the
Brett
I
did.
didn't say it. He said it.
I'm talking about Brett.
Yeah, really disappointed that that our
ski
franchise, that my franchise, that stuff like that was going on.
That's sports. Joel Stern, NBC News Radio.
This is Dunc and Holder on Sports 1280, New Orleans.
Welcome back, Duncan Holder. We got to have the music queued up. I don't think we have his music, the Rick the Model Martell
I
music.
failed you. I'm sorry.
Oh, I should have alerted you, but that's okay. We'll just have Brett the Model Martell come on. I won't sing the music, but Brett, of course, the Associated Press, been on the show before and co-hosted. Sat in my seat.
That he did.
One day.
He did a great job, too.
I mean, better than me.
Yeah, well, I mean, we can get a trained monkey who'd be better than you.
Wow. Wait, what is this?
What's going on?
You're about to be fired, Clyde.
This is not the first time I've heard this.
There you go. Brett joining us on the show. All right, Brett, I'm curious. We just kind of on the spur of a column that Jeff's going to be writing this weekend. We're going to pose it to you. How curious are you to see who replaces Jim Henderson as the voice of the Saints?
Well, I'll lead off by saying, incidentally, I'm driving right near the Audubon Zoo right now.
So they're going to pick up a monkey and bring it
I was
over?
going to ask if I could chime in on this. I'm very curious. You know, a lot of us grew up, with listening to sports on the radio. It's an important part of our childhood memories, whether it's night lying in bed as a kid and, letting the words paint the pictures in your mind. I don't know. Radio is really important to me. I think it's one of the reasons that shows like yours are so attractive and successful. And anyway, I think that it's a hugely important decision. And I'm probably biased in that regard because, I've been listening to Graf for a long time. And one thing that I think I like about him is that he seems to be so in touch with the psyche of New Orleans fans, and therefore it's kind of like he conveys exactly the emotion in his voice that they might be feeling at that time. And there's a lot of types of broadcasts, especially when you're talking about national broadcasts, or maybe it's in certain markets. People like to have a very refined, kind of neutral tone in their broadcasting, but in many markets, in local radio, the fans really want somebody who feels their joy and feels their pain. And if you listen to Tulane broadcasts, Graf is clearly that way.
What do you think will be done for that position? Do you think they'll go local, or I know you probably have no idea. It's probably a better question for them, but I can't see them bringing in a national person for that job, even though I'm sure it's going to attract a lot of national candidates because of the high-profile nature. It's the NFL. There's only 32 of those gigs around, and once you get it, if you do well, you could sit in that seat for 2 decades the way Jim Henderson did.
Right. I think it's hard to predict because out of due diligence, they're going to have to entertain some national candidates at least, and there may be somebody that just kind of knocks their socks off because they might not have been expecting. But, you know, the organization as a whole, it seems to me, has been very locally oriented in a lot of their pursuits, particularly since coming back after Hurricane Katrina. And you look at them, what they've done with Dixie Beer and that whole advertising campaign, renaming the basketball team, and, you know, on the cynical side, you could say, well, that, you know, Tom Benson just wanted to get a return on his investment when he bought the rights to the name a long time ago for minor league baseball. But on the other hand, they presented it as, you know, the state bird and with an environmental mission of, you know, raising awareness about, you know, the coast and stuff like that. So I don't know. It just seems to me like they would be inclined, all things being equal, to go local.
Brett Martell, the Associated Press, joining us right here on Dunc and Holder. All right, Brett, let's switch gears. Pelicans getting back on the court after the All-Star break. Tomorrow night, they're taking on the Heat in the Smoothie King Center. Of course, you can listen to that on our sister station, WRNO 99.5 FM. Cheap plug. But what are your expectations after the way they started getting it together after the All-Star break? Before the All-Star break, won 3 in a row. And now they're basically in a Royal Rumble with 6 or 7 teams for those playoff spots.
Well, I mean, I've learned not to expect anything with these guys. I mean, the 3-game winning streak was very surprising. But they really are difficult to predict. That they're so thin in a way on their roster, you know, that they have no margin for error. So, you know, if by good fortune, you know, Solomon Hill comes back quickly and everybody stays perfectly healthy, and you know, they continue to play like they played the last 3 games, and I guess they're a viable contender for the, you know, 7th or 8th spot. But you know, it could easily, you know, with some bad fortune or a bad game, it could start to spin out of control.
Yeah, Brett, I tell you, the local college basketball scene, we were both, Larry and I, and Clyde too, we were all kind of on board there a few weeks ago, and it seems like everything's leveled off. Tulane lost last night. They played Wichita State on the road very well. I'm curious, you've been to a few Tulane games. What is your take on Melvin Frazier, the junior from Higgins, who is now being looked at as a possible first-round draft pick, which is somewhat amazing. I don't think anybody had him on the radar screen before the season. What's your take on that? I mean, is that attributable to Mike Dunleavy and his staff and what they've done there?
I think the coaching staff has to get some credit in terms of, I guess, raising his game, you know, as far as basketball awareness goes, and making it complement his athleticism more. But, you know, I guess it's really, you know, I think just his ability to shoot and play above the rim and all-around athleticism. It looks like something that, you know, now that they've seen a former NBA coach like Dunleavy have success with him at the college level, NBA coaches have to be thinking, okay, there's potential for me to increasingly develop this guy into someone who can help us at the NBA level.
Brett, you've also covered plenty of LSU games this year, and now they've played their way into the NCAA tournament conversation. What's been your impressions of the job that Will Wade's done and the way that these players have responded after, you know, plenty of these players were on the team last year, and obviously that team almost looked like it quit. It's almost a 180 that Will Wade's pulled off up in Baton Rouge.
Well, the best thing that Will Wade did was get Tremont Waters to come play here. And that guy is a difference maker by himself. You know, I kind of think that the record would look a lot more like last year's if it weren't for him. He affects the game in a lot of ways. I mean, he's already broken Ben Simmons' freshman assist record. And, you know, he's nowhere really physically the type of player that Ben Simmons is, but he's He's got great basketball awareness. He's very feisty and quick. He is a clutch player. He seems to be unflappable in late game situations. And he's been my favorite thing to watch when I've gone to cover those games. So that was probably the number one thing. And now he has a good recruiting class coming in next year, which makes you wonder how much of a contender they might really be in the SEC, next season. This season, though, I would say he has exceeded expectations. I mean, they have a winning season now. I'm not quite sure they're really a realistic bubble team for the NCAA tournament, but the fact that they've played well enough to put themselves on the fringe of that conversation after winning, I think, 2 games in the SEC last year and only 10 games overall, I mean, that says a lot about what he's done.
And the Pelicans get back in action on Friday night. I'll be at that game. I don't know if you're going to be covering it or not. I assume you will. But what's your take on the Pels and this? I guess these next few weeks will be kind of nut-cutting time for them to try and make a playoff run. I've been somewhat encouraged by what I've seen from them lately now that they seem to have kind of figured out how to play in the wake of the DeMarcus Cousins injury. What is your take on the Pels and their playoff chances, I guess, as we go down to the stretch run here in the NBA?
I just think they have a chance, but I haven't really analyzed the schedule to see which games AD will have a good matchup. But if he stays healthy and continues to be as assertive as he was in those last 3 games, and the matchups are favorable for him, and he's got just enough support where he's not wearing himself out all the time, then they can make a considerable run. And it's going to be fun to watch him try to take over these games more now than he did when I think Cousins initially went out and Davis was trying to feel his way into his new role as a singular star player and how much he should be a facilitator and how much he should be a dominator. And, I think Will wrote about this too for your paper, but, it took a call from DeMarcus Cousins to Anthony to tell him you really need to take over, and he took that to heart, and it seemed to make a difference.
Brett Martell, the Associated Press. You can follow him on Twitter at Brett Martell, and, of course, all kinds of coverage for the Associated Press all over the state. And, Brett, appreciate the time, and leave the monkeys in the zoo. I mean, that's illegal to steal them, even though Clyde says basically he's insulting you, too, that just a trained monkey can do this. So he's insulting you while he's insulting
It's
me.
not true. I would never insult Brett like that.
Just remember that.
It's all right. I can take it. In this business, you got to have thick skin, right? Jeff?
I guess my skin is getting thinner by the day. Thanks, Brett. Appreciate it, buddy.
All right, take it easy.
All right, that's Brett Martell of the Associated Press. When we get back right here on the show, let's continue the conversation. I'm curious, what is your opinion on who should be the guy to take over for Jim Henderson on the radio? 504-260-1280. I almost feel like we're, a month removed from this conversation, but the fact that we don't know who it is, and you're taking a deeper dive into this, Jeff, over the weekend in a column, I think it's certainly a big-time topic of interest locally and really across the country, because guess what? All those radio calls get heard on all the NFL film shows and all that stuff, so this is a big deal.
Yeah, you're basically the documentarian for Saints. You provide the soundtrack for a lot of people's the moments that they'll remember for the rest of their lives, indelible moments. The Saints radio play-by-play guys, usually the one providing that soundtrack.
Absolutely. So come on back. Sports 1280, NOLA.com, the iHeartRadio app. Dunc and Holder.
I didn't know. I wasn't.
New Orleans.
Maybe that's why. That's why he paused. I thought you asked him about
Thursday from the Fox 8 Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Shelby Latino. Temperatures will climb into the mid-80s this afternoon, putting us on track for more record heat. We'll see a rain chance less than 20%. Looking at tonight, temperatures fall to around 70 degrees on both sides of the lake, and that's it. Then heading into tomorrow, low 80s expected for highs with some showers and storms around the area. From the Fox 8 Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Shelby Latino. Have a great day.
I'm Tony Goldwyn.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to ask, like, I can kind of say who I'm going to list, because I got a list.
Okay, good.
If you've been diagnosed with lung cancer,
yeah, we probably should do that.
Cancer.org/lung cancer. Learn more.
Payday loan fast? Try LendUp.com. Apply in minutes on your phone or computer.
You're driving me
and you can have
berserk.
cash
What are
in
you
your
doing?
account fast. LendUp.com.
Every like break, he comes over here and like starts fucking around.
A licensed credit services organization, not a direct lender.
Hey, what game and what year was it that Graff said, tremendous catch?
Oh my gosh.
I don't remember that.
Everyone gets a
That was
lot.
back when
My
I was
son
with
gets a lot.
Gus, so that was a while ago.
My yoga
He said,
instructor
Todd
gets a
said
lot.
something, he's like,
Oh, and don't forget about Bill.
Tremendous?
Yeah.
It was a mix of incredible and tremendous.
Like he stumbled out that, but it was great.
Tremendous!
Get 4 lines
That's a
each
great
with
word.
unlimited
Yeah,
gigs
I
for
like
just
that.
$25 each per line. Plus, get up to 4 phones for free, all on Boost's super reliable and super fast nationwide network. Visit your nearest Boost mobile store for a great tax season deal. Switching makes it easy to save.
Offer ends 3/8/18. First line is $100 a month. Lines 2 to 4 free. Requires 1 line to port in. Includes unlimited talk, text, and data with video streams at up to 480p. Music at up to 500 kilobits per second.
Yeah, I was about to say, I can't, like, that's going to be the post. That's going to be the main
texted
post
Josh
today.
in the parking garage. I'm like, sorry for late notice, but
Coverage and offers not available everywhere.
We'll make it work. This will carry.
Progressive presents Get Pumped. Inspiration to help you do insurance stuff.
Hey, are you just gonna stand there and let people not give you credit for being a good driver? You deserve discounts on car insurance, and that's what Snapshot from Progressive is for. So why aren't you signing up? You need music to get pumped? Hit it!
Oh, they were. Yeah, Melvin Fraser had a big game last night.
he had a real good game. Yeah, we'll bring that back.
Progressive Casualty.
Maybe we'll ask Brett again about the
Snapshot
Pelicans.
not available in California, North Carolina.
With the helpful hardware, folks.
I feel like I've done that before in the show. I think you did once.
Get our coupon at acehardware.com and save 25% on a regular priced item under $50. That's 25% savings on great products from Scott's, Miracle Grow,
I wonder if Brett was like,
and
Brett
more.
didn't respond for a long
Hurry in
time.
now
I was like-
get 25%
And
savings.
then you looked at like,
Valid with coupon at
just
participating
asked-
stores through February 26th.
I was asking, it's funny because I was
Straight when the Germans bombed Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
I was making fun of him.
What our insiders know.
Yeah, you were like
mocking
him.
Sports 1280 New Orleans.
504-260-1280 is the number to get involved. We're opening up conversation. Who should replace Jim Henderson as the voice of the Saints? Jeff's writing a column about this weekend. He has yet to write the column, but he has done research. And Jeff, just from ear to the ground, who have you been hearing that's possible contenders for this job? We figure there's got to have some locally, and then there's going to be interest in other markets trying to get one of the primo NFL jobs. I mean, it's like a head coaching job. There's only 32 of them, so many people are going to be vying for this thing.
Well, it's definitely a very popular position, and it's attracting a lot of attention nationally in the broadcast world. But I think the leading candidates are all going to be local, either local people or people that have local connections. So I'll just rattle off some of the people I've heard, some of the people I know are involved. First and foremost are people already there at the station. Christian Garrick, who's the sideline reporter on the Saints broadcast, I think he's going to be a strong candidate, along with Sean Kelly, who is the voice of the Pelicans right here at our iHeart station. What station is that? 99.5. Sean Kelly does a great job calling Pelicans games on the radio. He's already in the building with the Saints.
And before that, he was the Tulane radio play-by-play man. So he's done football. He's done it all.
And we've had him on the show before. He does a great job.
Absolutely.
And along those lines, Joel Myers, the veteran Pelicans television network play-by-play man, longtime NBA play-by-play man, used to call Lakers games. And Joel also has done preseason Saints games on TV here on the Saints broadcast team. And then two others that I've heard, obviously Todd Graffinine, who we've talked about, and then two others I've heard, but I'm not 100% sure of their interest, is Tim Brando, the former ESPN announcer from Shreveport. Obviously, Tim has done Saints preseason games and would probably have some interest, but I haven't talked to Tim about that. And then Mike Haas, longtime WWL TV anchor, also used to be a sports director there, I believe, with Jim Henderson. And Mike Haas is still somewhat connected to the Saints. He does the in-arena
stuff, like during, quarter breaks, halftime breaks, pregame, stuff like that.
So I think that's a pretty strong list right there of candidates, and I'm sure there's national people, maybe even other NFL play-by-play men that would be interested in that.
Yeah, guys, I think, and obviously one of the things on the YouTubers that they're bringing up too, which I'm sure some callers are, is, I mean, it shouldn't come as a surprise, but the local aspect, like they're very not necessarily concerned, but they have a very distinct directive of whoever gets this job has to be either someone that's local or has local ties to the city or to the Saints or has been here. And I guess it's that authenticity that they're going to want. And obviously of the names that you mentioned, all of those guys have been in and around the organization long enough to know what's going on, been around it, called it. But I don't think we should, I mean, we don't know the names nationally, but I mean, it's like I brought up on the stream as well, is like, you got to believe that there are some national guys who have had either some ties to Louisiana that may or may not still be here, but at one point was here. That could also be a good idea as well. But yeah, that authenticity for them is the key. So it makes me wonder if across the board that authenticity and that kind of locality is important for fans to be able to listen, to actually believe that this person is invested in some way.
Now, I've talked with people about this. How much play-by-play experience, Jeff, I'm asking you because I don't know this answer. How much play-by-play experience did Jim Henderson have before he did the Saints?
I don't think he had a ton, but I know he did do some play-by-play.
Okay.
There's no question he did it. He was actually, I think, first connected to the Saints as the preseason guy, similar to what Joel Myers is doing now, calling the Saints preseason games with Archie Manning, as at the time, and of course for a long time, Jim was the WWL sports director, and so he got that job calling the games, preseason games on TV, and that was his connection. Then he stepped into the booth. I think he replaced, I've got the timeline here, who he replaced. I got to get that down. I don't know if it was Larry Matson at the time, I believe. The first time, yes, Larry Matson had the job from 1982 to 85. Then Jim took over the Saints play-by-play job from 86 to 89. Then Jim went national for, I think, CBS. I may be wrong. I think it was CBS. Did some national stuff. John Ferguson had the job, and this was the second time he had it. Then Larry Matson took back over in 91. Dave Garrett, who is the WQUE, was the play-by-play man in 92, 93, and then Jim took back over.
So I'm curious. Again, we want your take. 504-260-1280. Who do you think should be the man or be the woman to replace Jim Henderson in the booth? You rattle off a bunch of candidates, and it's almost kind of bizarre that we're having this conversation because we're talking about people in our field that we know. So it's a little bizarre because we all have friendships with these people. So it's certainly something that's strange for us to talk about, but it's such an important topic. Look, we've got to talk about it. I think it's intriguing to people, and just the fact, I guarantee you, especially low. I mean, I don't know how much play you get, say, in Indiana. Someone reading NOLA.com wondering who's going to be the Saints play-by-play guy, but locally, I guarantee you people are going to be interested to read your column coming up this weekend.
Well, and just think about some of the great calls Jim Henderson made historically. I mean, he had Akeem drops the ball. Of course, pigs have flown, the famous call after Garrett Hartley's field goal to beat the Vikings. One that stands out to me was his call after the River City relay when John Carney missed the extra point. So sometimes it's not always positive, but there's an indelible memory of the call. and he summed up the feelings of every Saints fan in the world with how could he do that. Yes, so I think the position is going to be fascinating. I think you have to have a professional broadcaster, though. I don't think you can stick somebody in that booth that hasn't been a professional broadcaster. I don't think this is a job where you put somebody in there with training wheels.
And then
no, you cannot do that. No.
And then the line between a person that would probably be better served as a color analyst as opposed to play-by-play. That's kind of two different animals. It's one thing to analyze the game. It's another thing to actually call and describe what's going on in the field on radio for people who aren't watching.
Oh, yeah. There's a definite skill set to calling football games as a play-by-play person. I mean, if you've ever been in a booth with Jim and seen the amount of preparation that he puts in, and I'm sure Graff does it, and Sean Kelly, those guys and gals that do that for a living are professionals, and it is a very difficult job. It's not as easy as it sounds, and they make it sound so simple, but the amount of work they put in, it's mind-boggling, frankly, and I'm really interested to see who gets the gig and who it is, because it's so important, I think, to the psyche of the fans how passionate or how involved the radio play-by-play person is. And I'd be interested to see if there is some diversity involved here. Almost everybody we brought up, we haven't really found any diverse candidates.
Everyone you brought up is a white guy, middle-aged white guy.
That's what I'm saying.
That's what we're saying.
That's what I mean. And I would like to see if there's a diverse candidate out there that might be. That would be interesting to me, and I think it would be somebody that would be well received in this city. As impactful as the Saints are on all segments of this community, I think it would be fascinating.
And as we take a break right here on the show, just think back. Look, our good friend and former colleague, John DeShazer, he was hired to do the Pelicans radio broadcast, and he's never done it. And so the Pelicans kind of took a leap, and he's done a very good job in that role. And now he wears about 10 different hats. But yeah, that was the original role that he took, and but he wasn't doing play-by-play. Like people, it's funny, ask, Larry, do you want that job? I said, there's no way I could do play-by-play. Maybe I could do color. Maybe I could do color, but there's no chance.
Right.
Yeah.
I'd have to
It's so different.
I need reps. I have no reps doing.
But at the same time, though, to move to that realm, just like John did, I think John, and I mean, there is a learning curve, because when he started as opposed to what he's done now, he's gotten so much better.
Right.
He's gotten so much better at doing it.
That's like David Wesley had never done it. And now he's much better at doing it than when he started.
But yeah, you could totally analyze, because that's what you do now. Because you're basically analyzing every aspect of it, from whether it's free agency or actually the play on the field. You could totally do that. Absolutely.
Well, Deuce too. I mean, Deuce McAllister, you get reps, you get better, but it's one thing to do color, it's another thing to do play-by-play. So I'm curious to see what happens there. So, all right, let's take a break. One more break. Don't forget, in about a half hour, we'll talk Saints and NFL Scouting Combine with our own Josh Katzenstein. So come back, one more segment, and then we'll hit up to hour number 2. So come on back. Sports 1280, NOLA.com, the iHeartRadio app. Dunc and Holder.
Brett,
Eric Anderson bringing you the truth every day, noon to 2 on Sports 1280. Of course, you can also check me out on the television side, the award-winning Inside New Orleans Sports. Won a Press Club Award back in 2015 for the best TV sports show.
Eric Asher, weekdays, noon to 2, Sports 1280 New Orleans.
You get a strong opinion each and every day.
As a marketer, you want to reach everyone. Adults, teens, millennials. But it's not like these groups all hang out in the same place, right? Actually,
I've got no response.
They're all right here, listening to radio commercials just like this one. Radio ads connect with 93% of Americans every week. That's more than Google, more than Facebook, more than TV.
What's his name said?
In fact, radio reaches 20% more millennials than TV. Want more of the people you want to talk to all in one place? You want to get to iHeartMedia.com and get AM/FM working for you.
What is big? Big is a ballin', shot-calling, gravity-defying offense and a lockdown defense. Big is you and your posse getting loud and proud. Big is an insatiable appetite for winning. Come see the Pels against the Miami Heat Friday, February 23rd. Do Friday night right with friends and family at the Smoothie King Center. Visit Pelicans.com for tickets. New Orleans Pelicans. do it big.
I was asking everybody who's in our box.
Rihanna is celebrating yet another milestone on the Billboard Dance Club Songs chart. The Barbados-born superstar, now the first artist to score place as many as 8 number one tracks from one album in the history of the survey.
Some of the YouTubers, like one YouTuber brought up Stan Barrett,
like Joe Trahan or somebody like that.
Amazing 33 number ones
Like
on
Joe
the chart.
Trahan, that kind of that we're not thinking of that's out there.
Leak
That's a
of
professional
sex tape
broadcaster.
featuring model and reality TV star Black China.
Speaking
it was
of
released
Juan,
reportedly without
Juan.
I
don't know if he's.
told USA
Yeah, I don't know if he has
play-by-play guy.
undoubtedly a
That's
criminal
a thing,
matter.
yeah.
He
It's a
said the
tough gig.
29-year-old mother of 2 is handling the violation
Somebody
as
said
well
Scott
as
Alexander
can be
was gonna apply.
expected.
1 minute.
The Eagle
That's why we're
Ultra
so
wants
straight,
to
like
start
being around like
U.S.
the
tour dates
being
to
in
their
and around the
already
search for,
extensive
like, Hawthorne's
2018
replacement
schedule. The Rock and Roll
very
Hall of
surreal.
Fame group
So
announcing
many
5
news
more shows,
that came
kicking
through
off at
that
September
that
15th
even
in
I
Los
knew.
Angeles, moving on to New York City, Newark,
luck.
Detroit, and then
it still took,
Chicago.
like, a half a season.
learn how
to Sean Kelly actually
he was like,
being
oh,
forced to
yeah.
postpone a number
Yeah,
of
that.
scheduled
Yeah.
performances on her current world
I remember
tour
that he
after
came in
suffering a
every
major knee injury.
Oh, yeah. I
The
know he
singer
was a
taking to
runner-up.
Instagram to announce she'll have to push back over
Ask any
10
shouts
March
receipt.
and April
Well,
concerts
because-
planned
Into
in
the Oxford night.
Taiwan and Japan. Her
Because
injury
if
occurred as a
Sean
result of
would've
an
left.
onstage fall at a show in Dubai. That's Entertainment. Jennifer Bolsoni, NBC News Radio.
The
Got
Pelican
issues
guy.
with youth or high school sports?
Right.
Positive Coaching Alliance can help.
And that wouldn't
ECA,
be-
a national nonprofit,
that would be
offers more than 1,000 free
snap
online resources
decision.
for youth
Tough,
and high school
yeah.
sports coaches,
That would-
parents,
yeah.
students, and administrators. Visit ecadevzone.org.
Adam Batteri's resigned.
This is Dunc and Holder on Sports 1280 New Orleans.
Already getting some interesting names of candidates for who could replace Jim Henderson on the radio. Got 3 suggestions on Twitter. I popped it on Twitter. I said, why don't we get this conversation rolling? One was Fletcher Mackel. You're laughing, but unfortunately there's a GIF on here that they're laughing. So this person maybe
Wait,
not.
somebody suggested Fletch or Fletch weighed in?
No, someone suggested Fletch.
Oh, okay.
And then they had
a GIF for
laughing that
hilarious
they didn't really
purposes.
want him. Some on the graph, of course, Todd Graffinini, and then, like we were mentioning in the commercial, Juan Kincaid. It would be kind of a similar route that, say, Jim Henderson took. And so, look, Juan's been around for a long, long time. I have no idea if he'd be interested, no idea if he's ever done play-by-play, but he's certainly someone you'd consider. So, yeah, it's fascinating. I think it's a fascinating thing, specifically because of how ingrained that position is to this community. It wouldn't be the same as who's going to replace the guy who does the Jets. I mean, we wouldn't be having this conversation in that scenario.
What if we got someone who we had on the program last week, I believe, Jacques Doucet, to take the job?
Can he just do impressions the whole
He's
time?
doing impressions the whole time.
He's going to
He
do
a different Paul.
Pulmonary.
Mike Hawthorne.
He'll do less. Yeah, he'll do less. He'll definitely do less. In order, it's definitely pulmonary number 1, Skip Burtman number 2. Me and him have had many talks to Skip multiple times.
He does a good John Brady.
John Brady, and then less.
That'd be great. Jock could call the game as a different personality
every quarter.
So he'd be Walton and Johnson, where they have 10 voices, and Jock could just do it them all.
Dudes.
Deuce would be sitting there looking at Jock like, what the hell is going on in here?
All right, and now we've got Chris Gordy. Shout out to Chris Gordy, who is also listening. He's in the YouTube
He wants
stream.
the job?
No, he says we should have 1280 open auditions to replace Jim. My money is on Corey.
Corey Johnson.
And have
Corey Johnson.
Have him call the game in his Mandina's commercial.
Mandina's.
And they just scored a touchdown. Who dat?
Touchdown! 2 for 1s at Mandina!
Yes.
Almondine sauce.
Well, all I know is, Dave, if you have the call handy, the call that we helped make famous, as far as with the with Todd and the home run call, but
Jake Rogers?
Yes, the Jake Rogers call. If you have that queued up, that's worth. I think that's the only call. Like if Todd was submitting a resume, that's the only call you'd ever need to submit.
Drilled it deep left. deep, deep, deep into the Oxford afternoon. Hang 'em, bang 'em, baby. Hang them, bang them. 6-5 wave. He got another hittable pitch, and he did not hook that one foul. You gotta be kidding me, 6-5 wave. That's the biggest hit in Tulane since 2005, folks. It ain't even a debate.
It ain't even a debate. That call, we helped. Well, Jeff, you really helped make that go viral because that sucker got picked up everywhere. Another suggestion we had
40 seconds
on Twitter, Ken Trahan. Look, he's been involved with the Saints. Of course, he's a radio veteran. I'm curious to see if he would be involved.
That's a really good.
He certainly
Ken would be great.
Absolutely does Saints Hall of Fame. He's certainly someone who you would think would be a candidate as well. So, all right, hour number 1 is up. Hour number 2 is on the way. We'll continue this conversation. Look, it's a random Thursday in February, so what the hell?
Love it.
At least we got something local and passionate that people want to talk about. So we'll continue that in hour number 2. So coming back, Sports 1280, NOLA.com, and the iHeartRadio app. Dunc and Holder.
Guess what?
Like
with Boost, adding a
Yeah.
with a limited data plan has never been easier.
That's good.
So,
No, I mean, that's going to be the post today. It's going to be that, and I might make a card for it, too. I mean, that's going to be... I'm not going to steal your thunder. I'm going to say Jeff Duncan, who is working over here and tinker with this little... Yeah, I actually thought about it. I think we're okay. No one's complaining about it.
Switch to Boost and make the most.
I'm going to break your things. I'm going to break all of it.
$25 each per line. Plus, get up to 4 phones for free.
All right. When I take another day off, you can't get anything to work, dude.
Visit your nearest Boost mobile store for.
Yeah, I remember that. Issues the other day I saw. Of course, he didn't tell us that. I'm on the YouTube stream. I see. Where's the volume? Where's the volume? He panicked. Got it up. He got it fixed.
I was going to say, son of a...
Gaming up to 2 megabits.
Stupid Meebo.
And of course, the YouTube fans all the YouTube fans blame me. They'll blame me. They're like, okay,
and then you jump in, and then he jumps in with, oh, it must have been dangling a magical wire. I'm just like, oh my god.
The iHeartRadio app. Search Sports.
Where's Clyde to save the day?
Fox Sports trending now.
The round is over for the U.S. women's hockey team after Jocelyn Lamoureux scored the go-ahead goal in a shootout against defending champ Canada. The U.S. had to defend in their shootout.
Augusta picking it up, crossing the blue line, left wing shot, rolling to her right, pulling it to the slot, fake shoots, save Betty Rooney! Gold medal, USA! USA wins the gold!
So the women's hockey team wins gold on Westwood, won 3-2 over Canada in the shootout. John Schuster and the men's curling team beat Canada 5-3 in the semifinals, setting up their own gold medal matchup against Sweden. Meanwhile, American freestyle skier David Wise won gold in the men's halfpipe. Skier Michaela Schifrin earned silver in the women's combined. NFL news. Receiver Alshon Jeffrey expected to miss 6 months after rotator cuff surgery. I'm Deb Carson.
The Capital One Saver Card presents the invention of the sandwich.
Sir, the snacks you requested.
Ooh, look at that. Bread and meat and bread again. By decree of me, the Earl of Sandwich, I shall call it the Sandwich.
Really?
No one.
Which was once the next big thing in food. Now, it's the Capital One Saver Card. Earn 3% cash back on dining, 2% on groceries, and 1% on all other purchases.
What's in your wallet?
Capital One Bank, USA,
Do you know the power of a good idea? The Latrim Corporation has grown through people and their ideas. It all started in 1949 when our founder, J.M. LaPierre, invented automatic shrimp peeling machinery that changed the seafood industry. J.M. founded the Latrim companies, Intralocks, LaPierre Stair, Latrim Machinery, and Latrim Machine Shop. The people of these companies have patented hundreds of new inventions used around the world. If you have good ideas and want to help create the next Latrim innovation, visit Latrim.com for a full listing of positions.
Every show.
Josh in his morning 6 to 10 on Sports 1280 New Orleans.
We're remembering Chief Wahoo and the good times he brought us.
Who's going to cry at trash on the highway now?
Who's going to do it?
Didn't there used to be like fights outside of Indians games with like the groups of people that had, their side?
If they just would have shared the peace pipe, everything would have been better. I stand with Chief Wahoo. Hashtag justice for Wahoo. Why did you never ask what Chief Wahoo feels about this?
Oh, yes.
You know damn good and well Chief Wahoo likes his job. And then someone's got their megaphone.
What's that?
I need a text.
Chief Wahoo needs to go.
Martin Fishman.
Go away.
Oh, yeah.
I got his number.
To you, white lady?
Because I'm offended on behalf of everybody.
Maybe to get him on tomorrow. I don't know what the schedule is, but I'm sure he'd.
What privilege did you have?
Put them both
that
on.
privilege.
Perry Nickerson,
All we did is made a mockery of him. We made him a caricature.
Oh, show.
This guy's in a Cowboys jacket and he's yelling.
I think Perry
He's
Nickerson's
upset.
really a good pro.
He's like, what's next? You're going to
I
tell me what the
really
Cowboys
do,
do?
but
They're the ones that got the Indians.
The problem is he's like
Josh
5'7".
morning 6 to 10 on Sports 1280 New Orleans.
No, Todd told me he's a good.
Look for interest rates to keep going up this year, barring any unexpected downturn. The just released minutes of the January
Well, I saw
show
NFL
members
draft scout.
agree the outlook for growth is getting stronger, which justifies more increases. One of those, probably 0.25%, is considered likely next month.
You're right.
We've got smartphones, smart TVs, smart speakers, and soon we might see smart guns. Strong opposition from the gun industry.
Not even on the list.
Weapons off shelves, but Gareth Glasser of Lodestar Firearms thinks times are changing for
Some
a
guy
gun
from
that
Louisiana
fires
Tech on
only
there.
when it's linked to an external device on the owner, like a smartwatch.
So you have to be within 10 inches with that.
Dante
watch
Jackson,
in order
third,
for it to
fourth
fire.
round.
This is also how
Kevin
Glasser
Tolliver,
says his
second,
smart
third
gun
round.
will work.
Our token is either going to be in a ring, a bracelet, or quite possibly implanted right here between your thumb and forefinger.
You'll actually have an implant.
I think law enforcement will probably go for that.
But Glasser isn't the first to try to get the public to go for the smart gun.
We've seen kids shoot their parents.
The New Jersey Institute of Technology spent 12 years building a gun that could only be fired by its owner, but ran into a New Jersey law that says once a smart gun is sold anywhere in the U.S., New Jersey gun dealers can't sell traditional guns.
NBC's Mitch Blocker reporting, Priceline isn't just Priceline anymore, so it's changing its name. Priceline Group is becoming Booking Holdings to reflect the fact that the travel website Priceline.com is only one of its companies, and also the fact that its Booking.com site is now its center. It also owns Open Table, Kayak, RentalCars.com, and Asia-based accommodations.
Hey, we got DJ and NOLA East.
Cool. Under the ticker symbol BKNG. And the latest in the food business, a banana you can eat, peel and all. It was developed by a Japanese company called.
I think it's going to be Ronnie Lamar.
The no-peel banana is called.
What? So you can sing on air too?
Oh God, have mercy!
I know, right?
So far, for $7 each. Consumer and business news. Joe McConnell, NBC News.
Oh, he's
Radio.
texting you.
Dad,
Yeah.
this is fun.
I love Grab.
I didn't think I liked
course.
kayaking.
Well, I'm glad you
He's like,
enjoyed it. But I think it's time to head back in.
Okay. Can we go back?
Sure. Well, be careful getting on the boat.
It's a kayak, Dad.
I'm going to get torpedoed. Since
It's
you
a little
torpedoed
fisted.
him. There's a little fist
Can we walk home?
How about a taxi?
It's a short
Duncan,
from
the
your
human
neighborhood
torpedo.
to your neighborhood. Park or green
That would
space
happen
near
if
you.
I endorsed
Brought
it.
to you by
There's
the
no
Ad
doubt.
Council.
So
You torpedoed Tom Herman. Way to go. You blew it. Imagine if you wouldn't have written that. If you would have endorsed O, LSU would have Tom Herman. It's all your fault. Dunc and Holder, hour number 2 on a Thursday, February 22nd. Good topic we brought up randomly. Definitely was not in the plans, and yet it's certainly a good topic. Who should replace Jim Henderson in the Saints radio play-by-play booth? Got a lot of good candidates we've already talked about, and we want your reactions. Getting it on Twitter. You can go at Larry Holder. You can, or at Dunc and Holder. You could certainly get involved, and you can give us a call. 504-260-1280 is the number. Let's head over to NOLA East and talk with our buddy DJ. Hey, DJ, thanks for calling. What you got?
Hey, Larry, Jeff. Look, a couple of guys came to mind, about maybe doing the play-by-play. One of the guys was, I think, well-known here in the New Orleans area because he used to be on sports, Chris Myers. I think he's on Fox now, but I think he would be a good guy to, replace Jim Henderson. And also, this guy's name escapes me, but he was the spokesman on CBS College Sports on Saturdays. He's been around a while. I think he's from Shreveport.
Oh, Tim Brando. Yes.
That's it, Brando.
Yes.
Right. I think those two guys would be, perfect for the job. But I don't know how old these guys are. I know it's going to be difficult, for somebody to come along and do 25, 30 years like Jim Henderson. But I think these guys would be, good candidates for the position.
Hey, DJ, appreciate the phone call. Yeah, I agree. Those would be certainly some good candidates who I don't think we even thought about. But depends on their national gigs. I mean, that's one thing to go from national gig when I think Chris Myers is one of their top guys at Fox. And, of course, he certainly has local ties. He was at Channel 4 before he went national. And it's funny. Jim Henderson used to be with Chris Myers, and he used to be with Mike Haas. And Jim outlasted them all when he was at Channel 4.
I didn't think about Chris Myers, but he certainly makes sense, his connections to the city. But he does have a pretty high-profile gig already. Not that that wouldn't be the case. I know we talked during the break about Stan Verrett, who's a New Orleans native at ESPN. Obviously, he's got a very high-profile gig at ESPN as an anchor. I doubt Stan would, but you just never know. I mean, some people might want to move back to New Orleans, be involved, but I think it's going to attract a lot of candidates like that.
Yeah, look, you can look at Twitter. I've already gotten multiple suggestions for Todd Grappanini, one for Sean Kelly. Of course, we think those two are probably two of the top candidates for the job.
One for you two.
And one for me, specifically, and then one for the whole show.
Oh, well, I'll take it.
So Clyde would get in the booth.
Awesome.
That would be.
I'm telling you, it'd be a fantastic 3 hours.
You'd go on a soccer rant in the middle of a
I would not do that.
Game.
I would respect the Saints fans more than that. We would do. I think we'd do a pretty decent job.
No,
so one would have to be a leader. So it wouldn't be Larry.
We would be awful.
I'm about to say you got Jeff over here asking questions twice. We'd probably talk about Martina Navratilova.
All this, Clyde's just needling everyone today, man. It's Testy Thursday for Clyde.
Testy Thursday.
Man.
The cattle prod on the
Clyde
other.
needs a drink.
Yeah, actually, I'm going to get that tonight when I go see the Revolution at the Joy Theater.
All right. Well, I'm not going to be going there because Clyde's probably going to be going crazy over there.
Oh, yeah.
Once he starts.
Going to get nuts.
Exactly. But no, look, it's, and we just kind of spun this off, and if you're just joining us for hour number 2, Jeff's going to be taking a kind of a deep dive into this over the weekend in a column, and you normally wouldn't do this as far as, I said this in hour number 1, so if you're hearing this again, oh well, it's worth mentioning again, but it's bizarre for us to talk about these people that we know and we're friends with, and we don't want to come out and make a certain suggestion because a lot of these guys that we're talking about would be very good. So it's not like we need to throw in it's not like we're saying we're predicting the winner of the game. It's a tricky situation for us.
No, I know the Saints also will be heavily involved in this decision, as you would expect, because it's their games that are being broadcast. But it is a unique situation because they have a contract with Intercom, I guess I could say that, to broadcast the games. I mean, they're the flagship station, and they broadcast the games, but the Saints have to have some say-so in this, certainly.
I mean, he's the person on the Saints radio network, so I would sure as hell think the Saints would have plenty of say of who they want.
This deal is set up differently than the Pelicans. The Pelicans, Joel Myers and Sean Kelly and John DeShazier, they call those games, they work for the Pelicans.
Yes.
In this job, Jim Henderson worked for WWL Radio. So it's different. The contract is set up differently than the Pelicans. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how that plays into this decision once it is made, because it will be a different criteria for that person. And I do think there's a long list of candidates that we brought up today, a lot of really interesting candidates. I'm curious if there's somebody out there that we're not thinking of. Maybe some of the listeners out there, if you're driving around, there's somebody that you think would or is actually interested in this job that we're not thinking of. A New Orleanian maybe, somebody Saints related that's in another market. I'm curious to know, because I'm trying to rack my brain who might be involved other than the obvious candidates here locally, and they're all very strong. It's a very strong local contingent that I think is going to be jockeying for this job.
Yeah, you're trying to think back of like people who were here and then left, or someone like, and you mentioned like Joe Trahan, or trying to even think of maybe someone like Lionel Bienvenu. I think he's in Denver or something. Just like people who you might.
Oh, I've heard that name forever.
Come back. Right, yeah, but he used to work with. Where did he work?
I don't know.
WVUE.
Yeah, let's say VUE, right?
I think it was VUE. I'm not sure, but yeah, it's look, it's different here in this market. I would think, say, you could have the same kind of passion and conversation about this in other markets like maybe Green Bay, probably Pittsburgh. I bet there would be a lot of people who would want to do that. Honestly, you think of some of the iconic guys who do radio. Maybe someone like if the Vikings play-by-play voice, I think there'd be, because Paul Allen does such a good job. The guy, I forget the guy's name. His voice is very distinct. Who does the Eagles games? But he, someone like that, kind of guys who've been there forever and kind of had their own distinct style. And so, of course, Jim Henderson certainly had his own distinct style. And I think what they're going to do is you can't try to find a Jim Henderson clone, because I don't think one exists, because he's so eloquent in what he does and his delivery. It's you can't find someone who's going to be just like him. You got to just find the best guy to do, or woman to do the job, and I think that's what they're going to try to do here.
I think, were you talking about Merrill Reese? Was Merrill Reese called?
Yes, Merrill Reese.
Eagles games.
Yes.
Yeah, certainly a very polished announcer. Yeah, I think there'll be other NFL play-by-play people interested in this job because it's such a high-profile spot.
Yeah.
And what you said, Larry, is spot on about this is not just another play-by-play gig. This is the New Orleans Saints, who have become a high-profile team. And I've said this before, but I really believe when Sean Payton's era here ends, his greatest legacy will be that he changed the profile of the New Orleans Saints. He changed the perception and the image of the organization. I mean, for a long time, this used to kind of be a backwater team in the NFL. And even when they were winning with Jim Mora, they weren't high profile like they are now. And that's obviously attributable also to Drew Brees, who raised the profile. And I know we talked the other day, Reggie Bush was involved in that. But really, I think you have to give most of the credit to Sean Payton. It's so hard to do. But now that they've done that, this is a high-profile job. You got Drew Brees, a superstar, Hall of Fame quarterback. You've got all these young superstar players, Alvin Kamara, Mike Thomas, Mark Ingram, Pro Bowlers, 6 Pro Bowlers, and a team that's poised to make a run in a market that just can't get enough about news about the Saints. I've said this before, when I came to New Orleans, I had no idea that the Saints were this big in New Orleans. I mean, I knew they were popular. I had no idea it was like Packers-like, Steelers-like following.
No, I'd agree. And it's, with the winning, it's become even more entrenched. But even during the losing, I mean, look, people were, you could hear and Jim Henderson did this as well. You could hear kind of the passion, like when Hakeem dropped the ball, you could almost hear just, oh my gosh, we're finally winning a playoff game. It was, you need someone who's going to be kind of that embedded. I think it would be a mistake to bring someone that we don't know and is not from here. And and Clyde, we've talked about this as far as when Chris Blair replaced Jim Hawthorne.
Yeah.
Chris Blair, none of us knew Chris Blair, and that was going to be a challenge, but kudos to him. I mean, he stepped up. He's top notch.
Yeah, and the thing about that hire, just as much as it is about this one, I'm kind of talking about that with the folks on the chat as well, is that the same idea about LSU having a legend in Jim Hawthorne, who was the main broadcaster for LSU football, basketball, and baseball for over 35, close to 40 years. It was going to be a tough job to replace. It was going to be a thorough search of people from from all walks, and it was. I'm not going to get into the names because that's not so much important, but Chris Blair ended up being one of the ones who had a lot of experience back in Georgia. He was at Georgia Southern. He was their main guy for a long time. He grew up in radio. His dad was in radio, so he grew up with that. So, and the thing that I think also that we'll get into after we get to the caller is that there's going to be, just get ready for it now, whoever's hired, there's going to be a little bit of a schism in the fan base just because they're not going to get used to it. So just get ready for it now.
No doubt
it's going to happen
that.
whoever it is, because there's going to be that transitionary period of changing from what you have been used to what the future is going to be. It's going to take some time. Some people, they're not going to get on board with it right away, but those people eventually end up becoming silent, as Val said on the chat, because the person that is doing the job is qualified to do the job, and they're going to become the new, really, voice of the city on Sundays in the fall.
Absolutely. All right, let's hit the phone lines. 504-260
I-310.
1280 is the number. Let's go to I-310. Hopefully he's not standing in the middle of I-310. Let's go to Ed. Hey, Ed, thanks for calling Dunc and Holder. What you got?
Oh, well, while you're throwing out local sports names, how about Ed Daniels or Ro Brown?
Those are two certainly long-time media members.
Saw Ro last night?
Yeah. Jeff and I saw both of those guys a couple days ago. Yeah, and Ed, appreciate the phone call. Yeah, I just don't know how much play-by-play. I don't know if Ed's ever done play-by-play. I honestly have no idea, like, if they've ever done play-by-play per se. But
I don't know. I know they're both polished broadcasters.
Absolutely, yes.
And great guys and great professionals, and certainly would be the kind of candidate I think people would be wanting because of their local ties. I mean, those Ro and Ed know New Orleans and know the Saints as well as anybody.
Yeah.
I mean, both of those guys are on the Saints Hall of Fame selection committee that we were on the other day.
Yes.
The one thing I would say that I'm curious, and this is not a reflection of either of those candidates, or even if they are candidates, is do they look? And I hesitate to bring this up on the air or even otherwise, but do they look at age? Is that a consideration? Because this job might be one that they want somebody to be in for 20 years, I assume. Is age going to be? I know they can't say that publicly, but will it be a factor in who they hire because they want someone that's going to be in the job for a while? I don't know.
Yeah, and yes, you cannot say if you're doing the hiring, yes, you can.
But I just think it is a factor. If somebody, Jim took this job when he was in his, I assume when he was in his 30s or 40s, or 40s probably, and had it for a long time. I know that's probably what they would desire to have, is somebody sit in that seat for another couple decades at least.
Oh, I would totally agree there. All right, let's take a break right here on the show, and we'll switch gears a little bit. We'll stay on the Saints train. We'll talk with Saints beat writer Josh Katzenstein of NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune. He will be headed to Indianapolis pretty soon, I think within the week for the NFL scouting combine. So we'll talk with him about just maybe some of the needs that he feels like the Saints are going to be looking into at the combine, and also kind of the back channel talks, even though it's not necessarily back channel, but the conversations that go on with players, with coaches and GMs and with agents, and where wheeling and dealing gets done. And the biggest deal that was talked about last year at the combine had to do with Brandon Cooks. So that's where that whole thing got started. So we'll talk with Josh about that as well. So come on back. Sports 1280, NOLA.com, and the iHeartRadio app. Dunc and Holder.
Hey, it's Chris Gordy from The Chris Gordy Show reminding you our show has moved here in the new year. You can now catch us weekdays from 2 to 4 right here on Sports 1280 New Orleans. Same great show, same great guests, just a move to the afternoon.
The Chris Gordy Show on Sports 1280.
Mendina's.
New Orleans.
Nobody knows your car the way you do. The way it handles and tracks with mutters, not all terrains. How it only sounds right with a custom exhaust, and wouldn't ride the same without air suspension. Or how you had it painted pearl candy red, not just
sad if I need to.
Because there's a difference.
Back on that horse.
We know your car isn't just a car. It's a 3,000-pound extension of you. When your passion meets our inventory, you can do anything. Thousands of parts make your car your car. And they're all right here at eBay Motors.
This week on Big Easy Deals, get a family 4-pack to the Audubon Butterfly Garden and Insectarium for just $34. Watch as the beautiful butterflies swoop and soar all around you. Go to FoxSportsAM1280.com, keyword deals for your half-off certificate today.
Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House, 3117 21st Street, open Monday through Thursday from 11 to 9, Friday and Saturday till 10. Serving the freshest Louisiana seafood. Come get oysters raw on the half shell, charbroiled, and more. Try our cold or hot appetizers. The catch of the day are a barbecue shrimp po' boy. Enjoy a great pasta dish, crawfish etouffee, or shrimp and grits. But save room for dessert. Dine in our beautifully renovated dining rooms, on the patio, or belly up to the bar to watch the home teams play. Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House, now open in the French Quarter 7 days a week at 512 Bienville.
A new study shows women, especially those 55 and younger, are more likely than men to have their heart attack symptoms misdiagnosed. That could put young women at a greater risk of death
Someone replied,
than men
Junior
of the
Gillette.
same age. The study is published in the journal Circulation. Having a drink
All right, we got Josh in 45 seconds.
people than exercise. Mark Mayfield with the 80 proof details.
One bourbon, one scotch, one beer.
I think that's what I had last night. That seniors who drink a moderate amount of alcohol each day have a better chance of living past 90 than those who exercise daily. Researchers at the University of California, Irvine found that 2 glasses of wine or beer dropped the chance of premature death by 18%. Daily exercise for up to 45 minutes reduced premature death by only 11%.
Telling me that
Mark Mayfield, NBC News Radio.
Health update. Sarah Lee Kessler, NBC News Radio.
Saying Rick Pitino's a great human being.
This is Duncan Holder on Sports 1280, New Orleans.
Josh Katzenstein, NOLA.com, the Times-Picayune, of course, covers the Saints, and he will be heading up to Indianapolis with fellow beat writer Herbie Teope within a week where the NFL Scouting Combine is going to get started. Josh, appreciate you jumping on the show. And, you know, people see the Combine and see the shirts and shorts and the on-field workouts, and I think people are starting to understand more and more it's not just all about that. You've got all kinds of wheelings and dealings going on. Just kind of lay out what goes on as far as how active GMs and coaches and agents are, whether it's at the actual combine, out in restaurants and stuff, as far as during that week, and how much discussion goes on outside of just the draft prospects.
I was hoping you were going to use my favorite term, the underwear Olympics, as some people like to call the combine. But, yeah, I mean, it's really just like a big NFL convention. I mean, you have every GM and coach in town, you know, the scouting staffs from every team. You've got pretty much every agent is in town because there's a big agents meeting. And then they also want to be there, you know, working with, you know, their new prospective rookie clients. So, yeah, I mean, there's so much stuff that gets done. You know, different agents will have different dinner meetings with different teams. They'll all try to work out, you know, deals. Some of those meetings will happen, you know, closer to midnight. I remember last year I saw, you know, Dan Quinn and Thomas Dimitroff, the Falcons GM, sitting with an agent that worked with Desmond Trufant. And, I mean, this must have been around midnight. They cracked open a nice bottle of wine, and then a couple days later, Desmond Trufant had big contract extension. So, I mean, there's so many things that happen. I mean, obviously, you know, for the prospects, you know, everything that happens on the field is important. Everything that happens in their interviews is just as important as what happens on the field. But then, you know, once those workouts are done, you know, all these teams just turn their attention to, you know, their roster or, you know, the free agents that are available, and they start to, you know, map out a plan for, you know, what their roster will look like for the next season.
So, Josh, if for listeners out there that are curious, what do you think the priorities are going to be for Mickey Loomis and Sean Payton, Jeff Ireland, the whole Saints brass in Indy once they get up there?
Well, I would think the first thing would be setting a meeting with Tom Condon, Drew Brees' agent. I mean, I would have to imagine that, you know, unless for some reason this is a simple negotiation and they can get something done before the combine, that, you know, the combine will probably be the best opportunity for them to sit down and talk about parameters of Drew Brees' deal. I mean, because that'll be about 2 weeks before free agency begins on March 14th. So, you know, Tom Condon can sit there and say that, you know, Breeze will have an incredible market. The Saints could sit there and say, well, you know, he wants to come back and we want him back. And, you know, I don't know exactly how that negotiation will go, but I imagine, you know, a good chunk of it will happen at the Combine. Beyond that, you know, they'll probably talk to Senio Calamete's people. I don't know, you know, whether he'll be back just because the market could determine his price and price him out of what the Saints want to pay for a guy who will ultimately, you know, be a backup. I mean, obviously guys get hurt and your sixth offensive lineman is going to play a lot, but, you know, in terms of his contract, I'm sure he wants to be paid as a starter, and he's earned that opportunity. Not sure, you know, about Kenny Vaccaro, but, you know, I mean, pretty much, I would imagine the Saints will meet with every agent of a free agent that they want to bring back. And then beyond that, you know, Jeff Ireland and his staff probably have a much different job, which is interviewing all of the players that are there, you know, whether it's formally or informally, and then paying close attention to, you know, what they do during the workouts. But, I mean, it's a busy time. I mean, you know, GMs talk to other GMs, you know, they, you know, I'm sure Sean Payton will, you know, maybe look at other coaches that are available. I mean, it's like I said, it's a convention, so, you know, pretty much anyone who's looking for a job or who has a job, you know, will be there, so lots of things could change.
Josh Katzenstein covers the Saints for NOLA.com and the Times-Picayune, joining us right here on Dunc and Holder. Which position groups while you're at the Combine, do you feel like you will pay most attention to because the Saints have maybe an obvious need at maybe a couple of positions?
I mean, I think defensive end, you know, much the same as last year. That's one spot where I don't think they've necessarily answered, you know, their long-term problem. Obviously, I think Trey Hendrickson, you know, should be able to provide some value and be a little bit better in his second year. I think Al-Qadim Muhammad could certainly, you know, go from being an inactive guy to a backup role next year. But, you know, even if they re-sign Alex Okafor, I mean, you have to consider he's coming back from a torn Achilles, and, you know, as good as he was last year, he'll be a year older, coming back from the injury, and frankly, I mean, I think even with him playing well, you could argue that, you know, a better player in that spot, you know, could have made a world of difference for the defense. So I think if they can find another, you know, one of those hybrid defensive ends who is just as good at rushing the passer as he is at defending the run, you know, someone similar to Cam, I think that would be the priority. If that guy doesn't exist, which, you know, he might not in this draft, just because, you know, that's a tough guy to find at any point in any draft, and especially when you're picking 27th, you know, it might just be like a speed rusher, but definitely someone coming off the edge who can put more pressure on the quarterback, who can make it harder for offenses to, you know, just focus on blocking Cam Jordan. I think, you know, that's got to be the top priority. Beyond that, I think nickel cornerback is probably a need that a lot of people aren't talking about right now. If they don't bring back Vaccaro, which, you know, probably seems unlikely at this point, I would say that, you know, nickel cornerback suddenly becomes a much bigger need. P.J. Williams can definitely fill that role, but, you know, at some point you're going to need depth. So I think that's a spot. I know a lot of people are talking about wide receiver and tight ends, so I'll pay attention to that. But, you know, I say every year, you know, in the draft, just because something isn't a need now doesn't mean it's not a need long term. I mean, you could draft pretty much any position knowing that with either injuries or contracts, that guy is going to be able to have an opportunity to fill a role within the next couple of years. So I'll try to pay attention as much as I can, but certainly defensive end is number one.
Josh, what do you think the Saints do with the restricted free agents, in particular Delvin Breaux, Willie Snead, Brandon Coleman, three guys that I could see kind of going either way on those guys? What are your thoughts on those three in particular?
Well, I mean, I wish I knew because, you know, those are all pretty big-name guys. But I would think that the Saints tender all three. I mean, I think that's the smart move. The bigger question is at what rate you tender them because, I mean, if you go – so basically, you know, for anyone who doesn't know, there's three different levels. There's the low tender, there's the second-round tender, and then there's the first-round tender. And basically whichever tender you give them is what the other team would have to give up in order to sign him away. So obviously no one's giving up a first-round pick for any of those guys. Probably no one's giving up a second-round pick for any of those guys. But if they do the low tender, which is the cheapest, then, a team could sign them away pretty easily, because I think last year that price was like $1.7 million. So, another team could easily give any of those guys a $2 million contract, and, he suddenly walks away and the Saints get nothing. So I think it's a really tough decision for them. I could definitely see an argument for doing the second-round tender, which is about $1 million more, I believe. I think last year was about $2.7 million. But at least, basically the Saints have to decide, how much they want those guys back, because if it's worth an extra $1 million to keep them, then they're going to keep them, because I don't think anyone's giving up second-round pick for any of those three guys. So I think that's what I would probably do with all three of them, frankly. I think, Bro, we've seen what he can do, and it's a question of if he'll get healthy, and I think that's worth $1 million risk just because of the value of his position. I think Coleman and Snead provide so much value in the run game, and if Snead could, bounce back to what he was before last season, that guy's definitely worth, $3 million or probably even significantly more. So that's what I would do. I'm not sure what the Saints are going to do. Obviously, they don't have the best cap situation, so they have to, be really frugal where they can. So there's certainly a chance that they go low round on all those guys, but that's just, what I think the shrewdest approach would be.
Josh Katzenstein covers the Saints for NOLA.com, the Times-Picayune. Follow him on Twitter at @JKatzenstein. Hey, Josh, appreciate the time as always, and don't get too involved in staying up till 4 a.m. every night in Indy. Just stay up till like 3 a.m.
Yeah. No, I think I'm going to make sleep more of a priority than in past years, but I go where the stories go, Larry.
I know. You get down and dirty in the dirt in the gutter at 4 a.m. at like a steak and shake or something. I know your plan.
No comment.
Exactly. Josh Katzenstein. Hey, Josh, appreciate the time. All right, let's take a break right here on the show. When we get back, look, we can continue our conversation on who do you think should replace Jim Henderson in the Saints radio booth. If you want to get involved, 504-260-1280 is the number. On Twitter, I'd say the interactions got a lot of votes for Todd Graffagnini, so we know he's a candidate. So I don't know if Todd's paying them in nickels or quarters or what for endorsements, but that's probably about all he could afford. So
I think it's going to be an interesting decision. And I think they'll probably, I'm just guessing, spitballing the timeline, but I would think they'd want somebody in place by the draft, because I think that's usually a big day for the Saints play-by-play. I know Jim Henderson always manned that ship, doing interviews with all the coaches and the GM on draft day. So I'm just thinking that's probably a soft deadline.
Yeah, I'd agree. So, all right, come on back. Sports 1280, NOLA.com, the iHeartRadio app. We're Dunc and Holder.
Your forecast on Sports 1280, New Orleans.
Hey, we got a Jimmy in Gretna.
International.
From the Fox 8 Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Bruce Katz. Get ready for another day of record highs. Today's previous record, 82 back in 2006. Today, expecting 84. Our rain chance coming in less than 20%. Now tonight, overnight lows drop to the low 70s. Tomorrow on Friday, a better chance of rain. A little disturbance moves in from the Gulf at 50%. Still a warm day, high of 81. And the weekend starts out warm. Saturday, 83 with a 20% chance of rain. And then on Sunday, a front moves in, dropping to the mid-70s, rain chance at 60%. From the Fox 8 Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Bruce Katz with you.
I almost accidentally restarted me and Josh's feud. I wasn't looking at where I have all the songs listed, and when I looked up, I had scrolled down a bit, and all I saw was like 6 Nickelback songs, and I was getting ready to play them, and then I'm like, oh, it's Josh.
Oh, no.
In the heart of Mid-City, where it's all.
I'm going to hang up. You guys, oh man,
here we go.
Corey Johnson, Waka Waka.
Style New Orleans food.
Man.
Truly strolls into the end zone and then sits down at Mandina's table.
Is New Orleans.
Oh look, he had someone Uber Eats him some food.
iHeartRadio celebrates
30 seconds.
African American artists to every style of music. Hear music from the artists.
We're done. We're done here.
Hey, leave it on a high note.
Shut it down. We're done.
Michael, Marvin, Tupac, Diana Ross, and so many more. Listen to their special playlists.
You're going to see the Revolution? Is that Prince's band?
Yeah,
like
they're touring now. Yeah, they started a tour, and after Prince died, they decided to get back together and kind of start doing some tours, and then.
Whether you ride the wave or like to growl, we're talking your teams. Sports 1280 New Orleans.
Dave, you screwed this up. You should have pissed off Josh and played his favorite band, Nickelback.
You screwed it up by playing Nickelback as a whole, so it doesn't even matter when you play it. You still play it.
It's Testy Thursday for Clyde over here.
Playing some junk.
Speaking of being testy, Clyde, I'm not testy anymore. LSU's going to win every baseball game they play from now on.
Yeah, you go on that limb just like all the other rest of the limbs that you've gone on that have also broken and you fall into the concrete.
They beat LSU beat UNO last night, so now all's well in the world.
No,
Tiger baseball.
It's not. It's really not. But whatever.
Wow. See, testy Thursday for Clyde over there.
It's not.
All right, let's hit the phone lines. 504-260-1280. Let's head over to Gretna and talk with Jimmy. Hey, Jimmy. Thanks for calling. What you got?
Hey, how's it going, guys? Great show. I'll make it really quick. I'll listen to your response. Looking at the spectrum here of sports in New Orleans, you got obviously the Saints are doing well. I don't know if who was in charge exactly of that draft, but obviously it was probably the greatest in Saints history. And then you look next door with the Pelicans and Loomis being, I guess, somewhat involved as the leader, or he's the bean counter. I don't really know. And then you look at the situation now with Tom Benson being in the hospital. And I kind of calling up to find out what the update on that is. I heard yesterday he was in the ICU for the flu. He's, I guess, 90 years old or almost 90 years old. And my question to you guys is this. I know Gail will be taking over if something happened to Tom. But, it seems like you had that substitute teacher scenario where, somebody's popping in the VHS tape and the kids are running around. And, they're not really respecting the substitute teacher because that teacher knows, hey, look, I'm going to get paid today, whether we're delivering or not. And we see that definitely from the Pelicans standpoint the last few years, with the bad signings, the bad trades, Osik and this and that, and Del Demps and Gentry. And, all the coaches we've had down here, and yet we've drafted we've landed two great Hall of Fame players in the form of Chris Paul and Anthony Davis, and the stands are still empty. So coming back to Tom Benson's situation, what do you guys see in the future as you're seeing the attendance at the Pelicans game deplete and diminish? And, we have good players on this team. We're in the thick of the playoff run, and yet the just NBA support here is just so limited, and tickets on StubHub are like $2 a game. Unless they're playing Steph Curry or LeBron James, yeah, you can get a ticket for cheaper than a movie by far. So it's not a matter of it being too expensive to go to a game. It just seems like we don't have much support. So what do you see playing out in the future? Because you're here in Las Vegas, Seattle, Kansas City, all want a team. And I think that after Katrina, David Stern had a soft spot in his heart for the city, because of Katrina and all that. Want to bring him back no matter what. The Hornets, OKC, bring him back. But Adam Silver, I'm not going to say he's anti-New Orleans, but look, it's a different ballgame now. Katrina was many years ago, and the attendance is still bad. Even after they had that Hornets attendance quota. So my question is, what do you see playing out, and do you see this fan base supporting an NBA team here? Because, what's it going to be like if we lost Anthony Davis? And we're not going to just get another Hall of Fame player drop down to us like we've been having. So what's your take on that?
All right. Hey, Jimmy, appreciate the phone call. And yeah, that's certainly a concern and something I know Jeff and me, we talk about all the time. What's the plans? We don't worry about the plans with the Saints. We know they're not going anywhere, and that's, but as far as the Pelicans, Jeff, I know you've certainly said you could see them being sold off at some point.
I think that's a possibility in the future. But look, the state of Louisiana has a lease with the Pelicans. It's ironclad, so the team is not going to move and they're probably going to negotiate a new deal here in the near future with both teams that will lock these teams in here for the foreseeable future, I'd say the next 10, 15 years. So I don't think we have to worry about the Pelicans moving. I think that's a little over dramatic. I think what's more likely to happen is the NBA expands and adds expansion teams, and I think they want to add 2. One for sure in Seattle. I think they seem like they are primed to get a team back after losing the Supersonics.
And they're in the process of because that was of course a long contentious thing about how and who was going to pay for updates to either a new arena, but it looks like what they're going to do is they've found a way to work with both private and a little bit of public funds to renovate Key Arena. So Key Arena is going to get a major facelift, and that's obviously one of the last things that they need to be able to potentially try to resurrect the Supersonics.
And I actually think my hometown, Louisville, will be a player, and that, from my sources up in Louisville, have indicated that's one of the reasons why Tom Jurich and Rick Pitino were fired. It was a political move because they were blocking an NBA team's arrival or interest from NBA teams at the Yum Center in Louisville, because Louisville, I think, is one of the largest markets in the country without a professional team. And they have this glitzy arena that's been struggling to fill dates, and they want an NBA team there to automatically have 40-something dates. But along those lines, going back to the original question from Jimmy, the succession plan's laid out with the Saints and Pelicans. Gail Benson is going to inherit the teams after Tom Benson moves on. Whatever happens with Tom Benson, she will inherit the teams, but the teams will be run as they are right now, basically, by the executives out there: Dennis Lauscha, Mickey Loomis, Ben Hales, Greg Bensel, Mike Stanfield. It's the same crew that's been out there for 15 years running the teams, and they're basically running the teams on a day-to-day basis right now. And Tom Benson has been sick lately. He's as was reported yesterday. The team released a statement about his health condition. I know that he's still in Ochsner Hospital. I don't know if he's still in the ICU unit or not, but obviously it's a very serious situation, I should say, when he's 90 years old and suffering flu-like symptoms and potentially pneumonia and maybe even some heart complications, I've heard. So it's serious. There's no question about it. And I think everyone involved with the New Orleans Saints and Pelicans is monitoring the situation. And Tom Benson's getting the best medical care possible out at Ochsner. So we will continue to monitor the situation, but it is serious. There's no question.
Absolutely. So, we'll certainly be monitoring that. Any updates, of course, you can check them out, NOLA.com, and in the print editions of the Times-Picayune. And if it happens while we're on air, we'll bring them to you. So, all right, let's take our final break of the show. If you want to get involved, 504-260-1280 is the number. So one more segment after that. Eric Asher will follow us, followed by Chris Gordy from 2 to 4, Corey Johnson from 4 to 6. All right, one more segment here on Thursday's edition. So stay put. Sports 1280, NOLA.com, the iHeartRadio app. Dunc and Holder.
Yes, I'll be your girl, forever your lady. You ain't never gotta worry, I'm down for you, baby.
Josh Innes is moving to mornings.
I am.
We ordered some extra strong coffee and took away his Bailey's Irish cream. Josh Innes, morning 6 to 10.
You get the point.
No, I'm good.
1280.
New Orleans.
I mean, I'm good.
Statistics show that 80% of Americans will give up on their New Year's resolutions.
I have many people who would go on
but there's one thing Americans never give up: AM/FM radio. In fact, TV reaches 86% of Americans. Radio commercials just like this one will reach 93% of Americans in every single week of 2018. So if you want to reach more moms, fans, teens, professionals, shoppers, and more of pretty much everyone, radio's the way to do it. Make a resolution to go to iHeartMedia.com and put radio to work for your company in 2018.
I'm Johnny Weir.
And I'm Tara Lipinski. Entenmann's is celebrating their 120th birthday. Who doesn't love Entenmann's? Some of my favorite Entenmann's products are their rich frosted donuts, their crumb cake, and of course, Entenmann's Little Bites muffins.
Entenmann's is celebrating their 120th birthday in a big way with their I Sing on the Cake sweepstakes. Go to Entenmann's120birthday.com to enter for a chance to win some really great prizes.
Sing happy birthday to Entenmann's using the hashtags Entenmann's120 and hashtag hashtag promotion, you get a second entry for the prizes.
120 years. We love you, Antoine.
If you have hard water, the Lime Scale not only leaves white spots, it clogs pipes and breaks down appliances, costing you hundreds of dollars in energy and wear. Eliminate Lime Scale and other water issues like brown staining, bad odors, and lead with HydroCare water products available from Wave Home Solutions. Wave's affordable systems don't use salts or chemicals. You'll love the way your water tastes, smells, and looks. Satisfaction guaranteed. For more information, go to goodclearwater.com. That's goodclearwater.com.
Quitting tobacco can be tough, but you have a powerful team on your side. 1-800-QUIT-NOW. If you want personal support, we got you. If you need nicotine replacements or a quit plan, we got you. And if
30 seconds.
Life, we have the support you need. Most guys who use tobacco want to quit. The failure is in not trying. You may even qualify for free services. Call 1-800-QUIT-NOW. We're here 24/7 to support you. We got your back. So make today the day you quit for good.
For just $5 a day, you can sponsor a child through Compassion International. It's pocket change to you. It's life-changing for a child in need. Be part of the change. Become a sponsor now at compassion.com/radio. That's compassion.com/radio.
I think it's very vital to rock around. Dunc and Holder now. Eric Asher next at noon on Sports 1280 New Orleans.
One more segment here. If you missed any of the show, we had Brett Martell, the Associated Press, had Josh Katzenstein on, and lots of conversation about who might replace Jim Henderson in the Saints radio booth. If you missed any of that, you can check us out, sports1280.com, NOLA.com, iTunes, SoundCloud, and YouTube page, and you can check out Clyde's recap of the show. Does a detailed recap, and he's not even testy most of the time when he does it.
I'm not. I'm quite an upstanding journalist, recapper, whatever you want to call me. I'm a jack of all trades.
Where was that going?
I don't know.
Either way, I'm a jack of all trades.
Went to a weird direction there.
Either way, I'm very good at what I do. Thank you very much.
And very humble.
Yes, clearly.
Quite
Cocky
humble.
Clyde is back.
Yeah, Cocky
As if
Clyde.
like we're making picks today or something. But,
but I wish.
Yes, but look, big game. UNO played last night in basketball, and they lost. They lost to Sam Houston State 57-54, and that's going to put UNO kind of behind the 8 ball a little bit. Because that's that log jam up top, the Southland, and now they're going to be falling behind. They're going to be taking on Nichols at Nichols on Saturday, and I was looking at some bracketology and on CBSSports.com. They got 2 Louisiana teams in. They have
who's that?
UL Lafayette as a 13 seed. They had them going up against Tennessee, and then they have Nichols as the 16 seed in one of the play-in games.
Naturally.
Poor Clyde.
Of course.
They made the tournament.
What do we got to do to get a pennant, a Nichols pennant?
Well, I'm going to the Nichols game. I'm going to the Nichols game on Saturday against UNO. I'm going to the doubleheader. The women play at 4. The women play at 6:30. So I'm grabbing that pennant this weekend.
Are we going to actually get a Nichols pennant on our set?
Until I bring it to you, or
do we have to ask our listeners out there to please send us a Nichols pennant?
I would love if we have any Nichols grads out there to call on the show. That's fantastic.
So you're going to attend this game? Or are you working?
I'm going to watch as a fan. Absolutely. Going to watch this game as a fan. Just haven't been able to get back to Thibodeau in a while, so it just worked out where, fortunately, starting to have some weekends off, or weekends where we're not working or have something going on, and going to head down to the alma mater and watch doubleheader.
I have a story, by the way, and Larry, I think you were a part of this. Remember when we were at the Manning Passing Academy this past summer, and afterward we went to Bubba's 2.
Yeah, you did.
For lunch.
Of course you did.
And we've got a story by the owners of Bubba's 2 that when Ricky Broussard was the basketball coach at Nicholls State, and they, I think, won the Southland Conference tournament and qualified for the NCAA tournament, he went to celebrate at Bubba's 2 and I think somehow lost like a digit on his hand.
He lost his finger. He lost the...
I do not remember this story. I remember just eating delicious food.
Too.
He lost the finger right before the pinky on his right hand, and still, the craziest thing about Coach Broussard is that he could still hit a shot like nobody's business. It's amazing. But yeah, the story goes that they were celebrating, and he either got on a table or got on the bar, didn't realize there was an exposed nail on the ceiling.
Oh my God! This sounds painful.
Yeah, it is painful. Puts his hand on the ceiling, and then you can imagine from there. But he lost his finger that way.
So he poked it and had to get it chopped off or something?
Something close to that. Either that or like that, and the gruesomeness of it, like realizing that he had put his one of his fingers through a nail in the ceiling of Bubba's 2. But it's definitely a story that will go down in lore. But I mean, yeah. So that's
Bubba's 2 doesn't even. Do they even serve booze? I don't think they even serve booze there.
Oh yeah, they definitely do. What
is that, Larry?
Do they?
Yes, they have a bar there. It's
in South Louisiana.
Are you sure that place we went to every year that has a bar?
Well, we were at wasn't in where the bar is. Where you and I.
Yeah, where's the bar? The bar's on the other side.
On the other side. You just weren't there.
Yeah, you just weren't there.
But what, was that, Clyde, was that Nichols' historian, Clyde Verdun? Was that the last? Was that the last NCAA tournament appearance?
Yeah, I believe that was the 96, 97 year, I believe. I think that was the last time they made the tournament.
So if they were to go this year, it'd be a big deal.
Yeah, it would be a huge deal. It would be a very huge deal. And I mean, this is not even going back further to the Division II days, and then when they eventually made the jump to Division I and what is FCS, but still being Division I, jumping from the Gulf South Conference to the Southland, or being independent and then jumping into the Southland. It would be huge because and Nichols has not had very many good years. The last 20, 30 years, it's been a program that's had flashes of brilliance. The last time they came close was really about 2008, 2009, I believe, when they were the number 2 seed in the conference, and I think they won one game in the tournament and they got knocked out in the semis. That was the closest they'd come. Every other year has been 500, sub 500. So this would be one of the. It has to be. I know the NCAA does this, but it'll have to be one of the best turnarounds in the NCAA this year, going from almost worst to first.
Who's the greatest basketball player in Nichols State history? Is there somebody that stands out?
Man,
this is on the spot. Clyde is like
you guys are putting me on the spot right now.
You're the Nichols historian.
You're the guy.
I'd say I'm a historian of many proportions, but like I've seen a lot of Nichols sports, and I'm trying to go and think. I mean, because there's really not anyone really that
Do they have anyone that ever made the NBA?
No. I mean, we've had some guys. We've had a lot of guys go on to play in Europe, and of course, over the course of the last 10 years, we've had guys that have come from Australia, and some guys that have gone on to play mostly internationally, either in the Australian League or leagues overseas. Kind of like Bo McCaleb, who I've seen Bo McCaleb. I actually saw him in college when I was at UNO first before I transferred to Nichols, and a lot of guys like that, but not anybody really namesake. Yeah, Larry. Yeah.
1979 second round draft pick.
Wow, I totally forgot about Larry. Yeah. Oh man. I'm so sorry.
I totally forgot about him too.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Just saying, there was one guy in the history of Nichols State.
And then, of course, we were talking about this last weekend. I mean, there have been some guys that have gone on to play professionally at Nichols over the course of like many years. I mean, one being obviously Darrell Hamilton. Darrell Hamilton was really standout baseball player for Nichols before he went on to play in the majors. And then, of course, one of the most recent, Ladarius Webb.
Yes.
There you go.
Wow, we got a lot of Nichols
Kevin
stuff
Gentile.
today.
All right, let's hit the phone lines. Take one more phone caller today. Let's go to Gentile and talk with Kevin. Hey, Kevin, thanks for calling Duncan Holder. What you got?
I'm not sure where he went to high school, but there was a guy, Larry Wilson.
Yeah, we just mentioned him. Yes.
Does that ring a bell?
Yeah, Jeff did the research and just mentioned Larry Wilson.
Yeah, 1979.
Right,
Kevin.
he was quite the stud.
Yeah, obviously he drafted in the second round by the Atlanta Hawks. So, but of course that was before my time.
He was a forward, kind of a good-sized forward.
Okay, yeah, and the kid they got there now, Roddy Peters, I think is going to get some interest maybe in the second round of the upcoming NBA draft. He's a former Maryland player who's really lighting it up at Nichols this year, so they might have another draft pick.
He transferred from Maryland to Nichols State. Do you have a Louisiana connection? Wow.
None at all.
That's all Richie Riley.
He actually transferred from South Florida. This is his third program he's been with. He started out at Maryland, went to South Florida, and then basically got one final shot under what's the coach's name now? Riley?
Richie Riley.
Yeah, Richie Riley, the new coach at Nichols, brought him in from his connections up in Maryland. So he's a heck of a player, and he's probably going to be the Southland Conference Player of the Year this year.
Also, on one little note, I went to college at USL with Ricky Broussard, and he was a smaller guy, but he could always hit. And he would sometimes fill in with me and some buddies. We practiced against the women's basketball team at USL when they had a scrimmage and they were shorthanded.
2 minutes. 2 minutes.
Yeah, I've heard similar stories about him. And a great guy. Ricky Broussard, he's a Louisiana Sports Hall of Famer, but a great guy, too. Always enjoyed when I covered the Southland Conference, going down to Thibodaux and covering those games. What's the name of the arena, by the way, there?
Stouffer Gym.
Stouffer Gym, that's correct, yes. Covered some great games when I covered Northeast Louisiana back in the day.
And specifically that, they named the court after Coach Broussard. 2 weeks ago, they got a new court. They were able to bring in, and they got it dedicated for Coach Broussard.
All right.
I went to his camps, as a kid, for 5 years. 5 years I went to his camp at Thibodaux.
All right, Kevin, appreciate the phone call. And, yeah, so as far as the bracketology, Nichols, they had them winning the Southland, and then ULL 13. But LSU is not mentioned as being a bubble team by CBS. I know it depends on the site. Some of them actually mention LSU. This one does not. But you look at
1 minute.
You look at some of the teams that LSU's beaten. Look, they have Michigan as a 7 seed. You've got
Houston's got to be in there, right?
Yeah, Houston. A&M is a 9 seed. Houston is a 9 seed. Arkansas is an 8 seed. So look, they've got to keep winning.
Andrew did a great story on what they would need to do and how they could do it, but it's going to be a lot of work.
Absolutely, yeah. So, all right, want to thank Josh Katzenstein and want to thank Brett Martell. Again, if you missed any of it, sports1280.com, NOLA.com, iTunes,
30.
SoundCloud, and YouTube page. So, Eric Asher coming up next. Always bringing the truth. So, we will be back here on Friday for an edition of Dunc and NOLA. So, but stay tuned. Eric Asher coming up next here, Sports 1280, NOLA.com, and the iHeart Radio app. We'll see you Friday here, Dunc and Holder.
So classic. All right, ladies, have a good one.
All right.
You too, Double D.
Survived.
AT&T says it will finally provide the first true mobile 5G service before the end of the year. Customers in a dozen